Hello everyone, welcome to Foreign Affairs Brief. On September 30th, the website of the U.S. State Department released a message stating that U.S. Secretary of State Rubio said in a statement, on behalf of the United States, he extends congratulations to the Chinese people on the 76th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China on October 1st. The United States wishes the Chinese people health, happiness, prosperity, and peace in the coming year, as is customary. As usual, the U.S. State Department generally extends its congratulations to China before October 1st. During the previous Biden administration, then Secretary of State Blinken also issued congratulatory statements on September 30th in both 2021 and 2022, while in 2023 the congratulations were sent a day earlier on September 29th. However, last year the U.S. State Department broke with tradition and waited until U.S. local time. It was not until October 2nd that Blinken issued a statement congratulating the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. At that time, Blinken said the following. He stated that as the United States works together with the international community to address the serious challenges facing the world today, they are committed to responsibly managing their bilateral relationship with the People's Republic of China and maintaining open channels of communication. The United States wishes the Chinese people peace, prosperity, and happiness in the coming year. From Rubio's statement, we can understand the current attitude of the U.S. government toward China. First, considering Rubio's previously demonstrated anti-China stance, for him to issue such a statement now, it must have been extremely unwilling for him personally, but he still issued the statement and followed the normal protocol. Issuing it before October 1st was clearly not Rubio's decision, but rather his boss Trump's choice. Second, what does the Trump administration's decision represent? In terms of current China-US relations, it can be seen as a return to a situation where the two countries compete but do not break off relations. Trump's realization after half a year of maneuvering with China is that he does not dare to overstep diplomatic conventions. This is not because he is particularly friendly toward China, but because he hopes to maintain a balance point between China and the US. This is the result of China's strength pushing the Trump administration to face reality. The third summit between the Chinese and US leaders is currently being arranged, and until the end of the year, China-US relations will likely maintain the status quo, sometimes clashing, sometimes negotiating, but relatively stable overall. Although Trump's current focus is on arranging a meeting with President Xi, anti-China forces in American politics continue to make small moves. On the surface, China does not appear to be directly targeting the US or seeking to dominate issues, but according to a Bloomberg report on September 30th citing anonymous sources, China Mineral Resources Group Commodity has asked domestic buyers this week to suspend purchases of any BHP seaborne shipments priced in US dollars. According to the report, this means that the signing of new contracts will be completely suspended, including iron ore shipments that have already been shipped from Australian mines. These are no exception. Currently, BHP only has a small amount of iron ore spot cargo that has already arrived at Chinese ports available for trading, and these resources are all priced in RMB. Insiders revealed that this decision was made after multiple rounds of negotiations between both parties since late last week failed to yield any results. On October 1st, Australian Prime Minister Albanese in response to this statement, the Chinese side's suspension of procurement of BHP and Rio Tinto iron ore is disappointing, and we hope this issue can be resolved quickly. He said, I hope to see Australian iron ore exported to China without any obstacles. This is very important. Not only has it made a significant contribution to the Chinese economy, but it has also made a significant contribution to Australia. Bloomberg mentioned that at the beginning of September, China Mineral Resources Group asked steel mills to suspend purchases of BHP's Jimblebar fines, and this latest ban on iron ore marks an escalation of action, demonstrating China's determination to strengthen its influence over prices. According to reports, China is the world's largest consumer of iron ore, accounting for about 75% of global seaborne iron ore imports. 3 years ago, China established China Mineral Resources Group to represent domestic steel companies in unified iron ore procurement, aiming to act as a single major buyer and gain greater bargaining power. On the other hand, BHP, the world's largest mining company, is one of the three major suppliers providing most of the iron ore to Chinese steel manufacturers. Reuters pointed out that iron ore is Australia's most valuable export product, but a report from the Australian government in June this year stated that as global supply increases, iron ore export revenues may drop from 116 billion Australian dollars in the previous fiscal year to 105 billion Australian dollars by June next year. Australian Prime Minister Albanese said, "They hope to keep the market operating normally, and they have encountered similar issues in the past as well." In his response, he said that these measures from the Chinese side are always disappointing, but of course they hope this is only temporary. Sometimes when everyone is negotiating prices, certain things just happen. He hopes to see this issue resolved quickly. At present, China Mineral Resources Group Halts has not commented on the incident. Spokespersons from Rio Tinto and BHP said their company is unable to comment on commercial arrangements. According to a report by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, ABC, Australia's Deputy Secretary of State Chalmers will meet with BHP's CEO Henry to discuss this issue. Since mid-2017, the Turnbull and Morrison governments in Australia have blindly followed the United States in comprehensively undermining bilateral relations with China, including hyping up the so-called China threat theory, obstructing normal economic and trade activities between the two countries under the pretext of national security, and responding to the US-led orchestrated virus origin tracing investigations targeting China. Since then, China-Australia relations and economic and trade exchanges have plummeted to rock bottom. At the same time, due to improper practices by the Australian side in bilateral trade, China imposed prohibitive tariffs on Australian barley and wine and temporarily suspended the export qualifications of several Australian beef suppliers. Chinese customs also, in accordance with laws and regulations, conducted inspections, quarantine, quality and safety checks, and environmental protection assessments on imported products at ports of entry, including Australian lobsters and coal. Reuters, in its report on China-Australia relations, mentioned that since the centre-left Labour Party, led by Albanese, came to power in May 2022, relations between the two countries have improved. The South China Morning Post reported, previously, it was also pointed out that with the Albanese government coming to power, Australia began consciously making efforts to improve relations with China. At the end of March last year, China announced the cancellation of the anti-dumping duties, which had been in place since March 2021 and had rates as high as 218.4%. Earlier, when answering questions about China-Australia economic cooperation, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian said that China has always believed that economic and trade cooperation is the cornerstone of China-Australia relations. China is willing to work with Australia to provide a fair, open, and non-discriminatory business environment for enterprises from both countries to invest and operate in each other's country and to promote the continuous development of economic and trade cooperation between the two countries. Let's briefly review this incident. Many media analyses believe that the trade between China Mining Group and BHP Billiton is the core of the dispute lies in the long-term pricing of iron ore. This is not only a commercial negotiation, but also reflects China's strategic intention to gain greater pricing power and promote RMB settlement. The direct cause of this dispute is the deadlock in negotiations between the two sides on long-term iron ore supply and price parity, which have failed to reach an agreement. There are several aspects to this relationship. The first is the pricing power game. China established the China National Mineral Resources Group to integrate domestic demand, strengthening bargaining power with international mining giants. Second, the changing market environment has led to a slowdown in global iron ore demand and a decline in prices, creating opportunities for buyers to negotiate for more favorable terms. Third, the suspension of purchases is targeting US dollar-denominated cargoes, while a small amount of RMB-denominated spot cargoes that have arrived at Chinese ports can still be traded. This also highlights China's intention to promote the RMB in the dollar-dominated commodity trade. As for whether the incident will trigger renewed tensions in the previously stable and positive China-Australia relationship, it is believed that it will not. Iron ore inventories in Chinese ports can be maintained for a while, and BHP Billiton will find it difficult to bear the loss of its largest customer in the long term. The two sides are likely to compromise with each other in future negotiations and ultimately reach a new price agreement. It can be said that the incident is part of the negotiation strategy and can also be seen as a concentrated pressure test. China is precisely using this window of changing market demand and supply prices to test and attempt to reshape the rules of iron ore trade through the unified purchasing power of its consolidated buying group. The third consideration for China is to use these negotiations to promote local currency transactions, not to immediately overturn the US dollar's dominance, but to gradually advance RMB-based trade. At the same time, this also serves as a warning to the US political establishment, which continues to play small tricks in trade with China. Of course, this incident is also meant to put some pressure on the Australian Prime Minister, reminding Australia